The informal system has to become your survival mechanism. Jaitinho is the art of finding a workload.
Hello, I'm back.
It activates a cognitive
Uh,
creativity spikes, specifically because
I
the
want
conventional
to
paths are totally blocked. But here's the
start
paradox,
playing
right?
champions.
Brazilians
Hopefully, I
simultaneously
can
celebrate
get
the
the
ideal
rewards
intellectual
and I
strength of everyday
can
survival,
build
while
a stronger team.
condemning it when it scales up to
So,
institutional
yeah,
corruption.
wish
They
me
hold both
luck.
of these beliefs at the exact same time, managing a really intense level of cognitive dissonance. Section 2, Joy as a Survival Strategy. Now, tourists usually just look at Carnival and see feathers, sequins, and pure escape. But underneath all that spectacle lies a really deep psychological reality. Carnival is fundamentally an exercise in performative resilience. Its modern form was actually shaped by enslaved Africans who, despite facing immense structural hardship and inequality, used rhythm and public joy as a very deliberate form of resistance against dehumanization. It's basically a counter move. The world says you should be broken, well, you dance instead. And it's not done in denial, it's done in defiance. This whole layer of complexity is perfectly captured in one famous word, saudade. Western psychology loves to treat happiness and suffering as a strict binary, right? You're either one or the other. But the Brazilian mind completely rejects that. Saudade is this bittersweet longing, a deep emotional blend where joy and pain constantly coexist and inform each other. In this psychological framework, dancing in the street while fully knowing that street has potholes funded by stolen tax money isn't hypocrisy, it's completeness. Section 3, the myth of racial democracy. For a long time, there was this historical myth that extensive biological mixing in Brazil completely erased racial inequality. Well, the hard data dismantles that myth entirely. Even though over 55% of the Brazilian population identifies as non-white, severe systemic inequality absolutely persists. Look at the numbers. White workers earn, on average, 3,400 reais a month. Meanwhile, black and mixed race workers earn roughly 1960 reais. That is a staggering 73% wage gap. On top of that, black Brazilians are 2.6 times more likely to be murdered. So, yes, the biological mixing was very real, but it did not equate to equality. And this brings us to a concept often summarized as money whiteness. Unlike the rigid binary racial categories we've historically seen in places like the US, Brazil's racial system is much more of a fluid spectrum. It's heavily influenced by ancestry, appearance, education, and crucially, class. This fluidity actually obscures systemic racism, making it incredibly difficult to name and fight against. It creates this profound national ambivalence. People simultaneously hold their own genuine personal experiences of racial harmony right alongside undeniably rigid systemic exclusion. Section 4, the hyperinflation generation. Let's shift gears to the economy for a second. In the 1980s and 90s, an intense economic trauma completely destroyed the psychological architecture of delayed gratification for an entire generation. Between the 1980s and 1994, Brazil cycled frantically through 6 different currencies. Annualized inflation peaked at an unbelievable 2,948%. Just imagine your salary losing 30% of its value over a single weekend. You couldn't save, you couldn't plan for anything. This encoded a deep intergenerational trauma resulting in what we can call radical presentism. Basically, you spend your money right now because the future is completely untrustworthy. Even today, this manifests as an extreme, almost hypervigilant sensitivity to any signals of inflation. Section 5, navigating everyday danger. So, how does a population psychologically process living in an environment that is officially peaceful, but statistically one of the most dangerous on Earth? Take a look at the staggering number, 1.1 million. That is the approximate number of Brazilians murdered between 2000 and 2020. Just to put that in perspective, that is more than double the number of Americans killed in all US wars of the 20th century combined. When violence at this unimaginable scale becomes a chronic ambient reality, it creates massive allostatic load. That's the cumulative wear and tear on the body's stress response system. Simply put, it requires immense cognitive rationing just to survive. To maintain these incredibly vibrant public lives, despite all this ambient danger, Brazilians utilize specific psychological adaptations. First is threat compartmentalization. They are automatically assessing the safety of streets and picking up on critical signals in the background 24/7. Second, they use intense social bonding. A weekend barbecue in Brazil isn't just a fun party, it's practically a distributed stress response system. And finally, normalization. To prevent total psychological collapse, the mind rations its alarm budget, absorbing deeply shocking events into the everyday baseline. Section 6, the storytelling mind. To truly grasp the Brazilian emotional operating system, you have to look at their media. Every single weeknight, an estimated 60 to 80 million Brazilians sit down to watch telenovelas. Now, these aren't just your standard soap operas. They are literally a national moral laboratory. In a society where real-world institutions, courts, and bureaucracies consistently fail to deliver justice, telenovelas provide a nightly simulation of narrative justice. It's a world where, finally, the villain actually gets caught, and the virtuous are rewarded. And the real-world power of these stories is absolutely immense. Data actually shows that as telenovela signals expanded across Brazil, they altered the nation's fertility rates. They pulled them down simply by showcasing upwardly mobile female protagonists who had smaller families. This narrative processing tool is so powerful that it bleeds straight into their political psychology. It's exactly why Brazilian political discourse is so often framed around charismatic protagonists, deep emotional identification, and this epic battle of heroes versus villains, rather than, dry policy details. Section 7, Mastering the Paradox. Now we're seeing a massive clash of two distinct psychological modes. Traditional Brazilian syncretism seamlessly blends Catholic and Afro-Brazilian practices. The core psychological rule here is that A and B can both be true simultaneously. But in stark contrast, we are seeing explosive growth in Pentecostal Christianity, which offers the exact opposite. It provides a strong demand for absolute certainty, highly explicit rules, and very sharp boundaries between good and evil. And this is specifically appealing to populations who are just completely exhausted by economic and social ambiguity. We also see this paradox in the Brazilian relationship with the physical body. In a highly unequal society with really weak meritocratic systems, physical appearance functions heavily as social capital. This is exactly why Brazil sees upwards of 1.6 million cosmetic surgeries a year. Yet, at the very same time, there is this powerful, growing movement focused on natural identity reclamation, especially around Afro-Brazilian aesthetics. So the body here is both celebrated with immense freedom on the beaches, but simultaneously subjected to relentless public judgment and discipline. And then, of course, there's the Amazon. The data highlights a really profound ecological cognitive dissonance. On one hand, the Amazon is Brazil's proudest symbol. It's this cosmic identifier that makes the nation globally significant. But on the other hand, there is a fierce defense of economic survival and sovereign rights against any sort of foreign intervention.
Right. Well, I'm not going to immediately answer your question because I want to say that the very first thing I did in relation to COVID was to study all the scientific literature that I could about whether or not face masks are of any use at all in this thing. And I found that all the reliable clinical studies, comparative studies, all of them conclude that they cannot detect a benefit from wearing a mask in the general population or between people and so on. And I immediately wrote a review article, scientific review article about that. And it immediately became very popular and gave rise to a lot of debate and got me barred, actually, from a research page where I had published it. I mean, it's just incredible. It was a scientific review article. So that was my first experience, immediate censorship.
A warm welcome on what is a lovely evening for football. And joining me, Guy Mowbray, for commentary is the midfielder turned expert analyst Stuart Robson. And we have live Champions action for you. What are your expectations from this?
Well, as is always the case, both teams will look to control the centre of the pitch. Whichever can do that will dominate possession and probably the game. This is going to be key, I think, today.
And the first half of this Champions encounter is off and running. Ugo Ekitike. This is the home side's team today.
Well, on paper, they look a very balanced team. The three advanced midfielders must at times make runs beyond the centre forward. Otherwise, they might just lack a bit of penetration.
This is how the visitors start the game. Alisson is in goal. Nuno Mendes starts with Achraf Hakimi as fullbacks. Vitinha plays alongside Emmanuel Petit in central midfield. And they're going with two men leading the line.
And so I immediately jumped into that game. And I immediately
possession changes hands and far too cheaply.
That was a little bit sloppy there.
Teeing up the chance now. Good patient build-up, but not quite the end product.
It's similar around the world. And it's only happens in certain countries where they mistreated people in hospitals and care homes and so on at that time. And where the response was really aggressive. That's the only place you see
That's really well cut out.
It's particularly large in certain places like New York Northern Italy, and so on. So we have studied that phenomenon in great detail in many articles since then. But that very first article I wrote as a single author was back in June of 2020. And I said,
That
look,
looks decent,
here's
making
our
progress here.
the Europe, Canada, the US. This
Di
is not
Maria,
again.
a
This
fantastic
is a
save.
surge
That breakaway was
of
lightning
response.
quick.
This is a
That's an
medical
impressive
death
save.
response
No
of
goals
directions
yet.
by power,
This could be
of directions
dangerous.
by institutions that
Oh,
are causing that.
incredible.
And it's
That's
being
top
turned
quality
on
goalkeeping.
immediately when you announce
Something different from the corner.
and you decide you're going to be doing all of these things and locking everything down and so on.
Mark
And
Cucurella.
so I became convinced
Oh,
later
they've
that
lost it.
the,
The attack is
that the
over.
model of the
Just
spreading
read the
viral
situation
disease
so
in
well,
terms of
didn't
other
they?
pandemics could not be true, and I said, so wait. And
That was quite popular.
yeah, that was quite controversial.
Promising looking attack
And
now
we
from
can
Rovers.
look
To
at
take the
data
lead.
in,
There it is. That's the breakthrough. And fully deserved, you have to say.
resolution by data, whatever the available
Nuno Mendes.
and we look at we take map of the evolution from
Alessandro Bastoni.
very detailed papers that can be found on the coalition website.
Coutinho.
And we've
So much
really
given away is
demonstrated
cleverly
that
won.
we do take the most sophisticated, most advanced, state-of-the-art models about the basic spread of this thing, how it must spread, and so on. The
Kaka.
measurements are completely unoccupied. It is infallible. We
Work
get
to win
to
the ball back
the
by
spreading,
Rovers.
using airplanes and trains, and, depending on the city and population. They do all these incredible models, and they're all wrong. They get it wrong in completely.
That
like
set up the chance.
disproving that all kinds of chances. If you do a
Oh,
measurement,
surely.
and if you can
It's
get
the
through
sort of
the
finish
obstacle
you
enough,
can only
that's what
smile
we've done.
about. Saw
And
the keeper
so,
off the line to score a goal of true quality.
It
Incredible.
was so reliable. It wasn't dependent on the test that can be an error. The coaches either get it or not. And it didn't
Given
rely
away by
on
Rovers.
political bias in assigning cause of death. None of that was present. It's pure data. And so we
João
saw things,
Neves.
we saw hotspots, we were geographically we were able to go down and see jurisdictions at the county level, or even smaller in Europe, where you have a large hospital, and that's cause
Vitinha.
of death. Right there at that time.
Mendes.
And everywhere else, you can see nothing happening.
Vitinha.
So people don't realize
Good work
that
by
that
Rovers
huge
to win the
peak
ball back.
was not present in most of the states of the United States. And in Europe, for example, there was a huge amount of mortality in the countries around Germany, and zero
Rivaldo.
detectable mortality in Germany, who did not implement these protocols. And
Good spell
so
of patient
it's very, very
possession.
funny. The virus
Mbappe.
aspect,
There
which
it
is
is.
very,
The
very, very different.
lifeline
So
in
you
this
can really
game.
see
And surely
all of the
momentum is
dynamics
with them
in the
now.
mouth and the evolution.
Incredible.
But this is the political approach that really what we ended up
So that makes it 2-1.
including
And
all
away
of
we
the
go
sports,
again.
over 40 detailed reports that are sometimes more than
Paolo
hundreds of
Maldini.
pages long. What we ended up concluding that
This
is
is a
that
lovely position to be in.
a
Keeping the
direction
ball
by
and
the
the
medical
lead.
system and by
They
society
look
and by
so
government
comfortable, don't they?
causes the kind of stress
Kirchu.
and isolation that in fragile people will cause them to die. So the main cause of death,
Ugo
and we
Ekitike.
calculated worldwide that in the course of the first 3 years of the pandemic, it was 31 million people who died, but with not
Vitinha.
many effects. And the main cause of death
Rivaldo.
is the response, the direction, the medical.
A lot of room out wide here for Rovers.
All of
And
these things
stopped in their
are
tracks
what
with a
mostly
change in possession.
exponential age, mostly those people. And so we concluded that, and there's a lot of
Oh,
things
could
that-
be
that-
here.
And what is ignored by the medical establishment is that a major cause of
Deceptive.
death
Great reading of the
is
game.
violent
Lovely
system.
ball. This could
And
lead
you
to
subject people
something.
to social
Cleared,
isolation,
but not out of
you
trouble
mobilize
yet.
them, and you
And that will do
subject
it.
them
Lots of
with fear
good play, but no
and
Olay.
impositions of staying in bed, wearing things, not giving them the normal confidence.
Gets past
It
really
causes,
nicely.
a deadly
And he's in now.
in
And
fact,
there's
and
another
so
one.
that's why
Valuable breathing space for
we're
them
not saying
now.
that we're not saying that infection is real. In fact, I will have a statement that
And away we go again at 3-1 now.
transmission was pneumonia, bacterial, and explain that there's a large body of science that
Hakimi.
demonstrates this.
Played back to Alice.
Pneumonia. There is the whole idea of the microbiome in the
Neves.
lungs, skin, so on. So you've got
Vitinha.
microbes that can
Kaka. That will
take
keep the
advantage of
attack
changing
moving nicely.
circumstances in your life to do some real changes in your microbiome, whether it's the gut or
What a
and
chance.
how you be very clear
Oh,
about
it's in.
And so
Oh, yes. What a way to silence this crowd.
This is amazing.
So it's 3-2 as the ball gets rolling again.
This is what was the,
Yeah, fair.
well, I feel like this is what I was talking about this topic because
Kirchu.
I'm very
Keeping the ball really nicely here. Having a go. Someone with the team there. And they've scored again. That puts them further in front. What a position to be in.
Well, as the replay shows, this is all about his ability to find space in the box, which then makes the finish look so much easier. That's good play from him.
Mendes.
Bastoni. And so we got
Petit.
talking about factors of stress and what that does to our health. And I
Setting
think
up the
that's,
chance.
something I had never thought before thinking about looking at that using all those modalities.
And on that whistle, the first half comes to an end.
I was cooking, bro. I was cooking.
So that you could actually measure these things with all those modality data. That's something that you that I saw you do for the first time ever.
Yeah, and you can really have a limited view if you're looking at a patient one at a time and making diagnoses and deciding on a treatment. That can give you a very limited view because you have to step back enough to see in this population what is happening with so many people are getting sick right now and sick in this way. And when you ask those questions, I think you have to come to the conclusion that all of these elements that cause biological stress, which is a scientific concept that's been really well defined by researchers over decades, all of these factors, if you're subjected to biological stress for an extended period of time, intensely enough, you're going to get sick and die by whatever, there's a million ways that you can get sick and die. All kinds of different ways, all kinds of ways that your microbiome can get out of whack, all kinds of ways that you can develop all kinds of nasty things and die. And so if you're doing diagnosis by diagnosis, you don't see that big picture. That's one of the dangers, I think. And so when we step back and look at mortality, we can start
We're back
populating.
underway. 45 more minutes to come.
One of the important things about conceptually is I discovered something in recent years, maybe the last decade, that is really, really fundamental that most people don't think about when they're trying to understand society. And it's this. And it's tied to health. And I'll tell you
Danny
about
Ceballos.
it's that if you look at social animals, whatever
That's
they may
really
be,
well cut
humans,
out.
monkeys,
Good
dogs,
positioning to win the ball back
any
there.
kind of social animal. So if they're getting together in society, and that gives them an evolutionary advantage to deal with it.
Oh, super challenge. He stopped a certain goal.
Social are structured in a dominant form. It's so stable.
And it's
Always
comfortably
One
gathered.
of the biggest
What?
if you were
97.
coming down and looking at these
What?
animals on Earth, that's the first natural level observation you would observe about any of these societies, is that they organize
Danny
as
Ceballos.
dominant hierarchy. So what that means is that there are dominant individuals in the case of human
Really
institutions,
nicely played. What can they
governments,
do with this now?
government leaders,
That's
elites, and so
wasteful
those
from
dominant
Rovers.
individuals that will keep everyone in place. And there's
Now
a
I wonder
whole
where this is going.
line
This
or
could be.
period
And there's his
so
second of the
you
match.
need to have
Leading
people
the
about
way
the
for the team.
community. And the way
Another goal means another kick-off at 4-3 now.
is that you address the underlying.
Danny Ceballos.
There's a constant aggression to maintain
Torres.
that dominant power. And it takes many different forms in human society. And it has to be
Rivaldo.
irrational and chaotic aggression for it to be the most important.
Able to skip past.
Okay? And these dominant hierarchies, they can be made more
No spreads for the attackers to feed on.
or
Hung
they
on to
can
the ball
veer
well.
towards and develop towards a more totalitarian state, a more extreme state. And this is true animal group to animal group as well, depending on each group's
Di Maria.
history and their environment. There are some very violent and very highly
real opportunity.
deep spirit of
Oh,
dominant
superb
hierarchy.
reflexes.
And it can be much wider as well. And so what we
Corner
find
taken.
in modern society with quality is that if you have
Torres.
more spread and more layers, and middle classes, working classes, different sectors, it makes for a stronger society because
Ball
each
is back
individual
with
can
Rovers.
contribute more to the whole. Whereas if you go to a more totalitarian system where basically some overlords and serfs, those serfs are very thick, and they're not
Di
that
Maria.
great at doing creative work or anything. So you're more susceptible
And
to
the
being
momentum is
get
lost.
hard by
They're much harder to break down in those areas,
the
aren't they?
serfs are not soldiers and so on. And
Rivaldo.
so, the
Nuno
existence
Mendes.
of the dominant hierarchy that is well known in
Really
animal
promising
behavior
pass.
studies. And that is
Is
central.
this the
See, the thing
equaliser?
is, all of these political things
Oh, he saw it
make a
coming.
mistake of not
And
finding
that's
from
safe and secure
the
goalkeeping.
biological point of view. And what I have to say,
Lionel
and
Messi.
I believe I could supposed to say this, is that we know scientifically
Maria.
that biological stress will shorten your life and cause you to sick and often and after that. We know that.
Promising move stalls.
We also know that your organizing dominant hierarchy and then you keep people in the place by these very strong little breaths, little bit of noise. And so what I proposed was that the link between stress
There's a bit of belief in this move.
is evolutionary and advantage because it allows you to stabilize the ball. You see what I mean? So the other that become weaker are not as healthy, are not able to
Di Maria now.
challenge people higher up in the hierarchy. So it's a stabilizing
Danny
mechanism.
Ceballos.
So in other words, I have proposed as a
Closed
hypothesis
it down
that
well.
the link between biological stress and health has actually followed us in an evolutionary path, and is a hard product of that evolution. And it's kind of, it hasn't disappeared or hasn't been solved because it is evolutionarily advantageous.
And Rovers have the ball
So
again.
that's one of the crazy ideas that I've put forward
Space out wide here for
Well,
Rovers.
the political theories, I know it. I studied them and I've written about them.
And that's a shame for them.
socialism,
Nothing doing.
anarchism, capitalism, and so on. They don't
Good pressure high up the pitch.
acknowledge that whatever system you try to ideally set up, long hierarchies will fall within the system. And there will be all kinds of difficulties
Di Maria.
related to that. And that is fundamentally human
Now,
and
this might be promising.
necessary
Gets
part of
this
it. So they don't
Another
recognize
goal.
them, and
And
therefore
it's
they
one
make
that
mistakes in the
tightens their
design
grip
and
on this
theory of
catch.
it. But anyway, that's another topic.
But that's crazy because like everything in me, or what's so crazy about it is everything in me, like I recognize what you say about these hierarchies, about this power and ways, and also our modern system, the way it imposes power on people below it. We don't have physical violence, but there's certainly a lot of psychological violence involved, which still continues actually to shock me. But everything in me says, I want to fight against that. I want
Yes.
to fight that hierarchy and,
Yes.
and resist it and kick it over and knock it down. But should I not then?
Well, that impulse to fight back and to want influence in society is what is the counterforce that prevents this strong hierarchy.
Well, as you can see, he doesn't mess about here, does he? He's strong, well balanced and skilled. That's a top
And
class
so there's
finish.
a constant battle like that. And I've written about this. In fact, I really only want to talk about a chapter in that book, but I've written about how the essential, the individual and family.
Right idea, but the wrong side
who
of the fine
has
margins.
to access information,
Just
to
needed a
have
bit of
care,
weight on it.
to not be overly brilliant, to have talent and so on. There is the counterforce
10 minutes
against
of
this,
play remain.
this hierarchy of the life of its own, and it will develop eventually towards
Nicely played.
And including money always has very
There
good
weren't any
to
doubts.
recognize
There
that it's
surely aren't any
very
now.
good
A
and to
truly dominant display.
But coming back to this idea, as you said,
Off we go then for the final time perhaps. Maybe not as they continue to dominate.
Yes, okay. Very much. Yes. Well, okay, yeah. So they're all in they are physical weapons. And
Oh, good defending, just when it was looking threatening.
If you're you go at the bottom of the hierarchy, then it's very well.
Lovely incisive ball. Well, they're not going to profit. Good defending.
In any government hierarchy, access to resources is at the gradient. So there's necessarily a
Raphael.
gradient of health, so there's a gradient of access to resources, and food resources is a big one in our
Neves.
society. But it's not just
Well
quality
read.
food, it's quality food. It's nutritional
Messi.
value of the food that the
Di Maria.
There's
There's a chance for them to go now. And the breakaway has now
And
been broken.
Yeah, very good recovery runs from the defenders there.
Danny Ceballos. Opportunity now. And Ted these are sharp reactions.
Ah, that should have been a goal, but what a save that was.
Too much on that. It's all over everyone.
The people who suffer with epidemic of obesity, they're eating sugar. They have the
And that's the final whistle. A positive result, at least as far as the home fans are concerned. What did you make of their performance?
You're absolutely right. Their attacking play was excellent, full of energy and pace, and the midfield completely dominated the game. It was a great all-round performance.
And it's interesting that the reverse is with a Kennedy leadership and so on. Because I see that reversal, I understand it, perspective, as a back, as people are pushing back. And so there's a reversal, even at that level, you see. So you can, in a macroscopic way, understand the loss of value and and institutional interleague battles in terms of its own and its rules, I think. So once you get less nutritious food, your entire physiology is such that you are less able to resist stress. The biological stress will have a different impact on you if you are nutrient deficient and you more easily get sick. So it kind of goes together. So not only is the aggression directly from the stress of that directly causing you to be sick, and that's well established scientifically, it's in individuals also who are, not as healthy because of what they're able to access in terms of resources, food resources, and other resources like shelter and so on. So that's how it all fits together. This is how you keep a dominant hierarchy in place, if you like. But,
So what's super interesting, oh, sorry.
yeah, no.
What's super interesting about that is that I have so much, there's a lot of attention in the Netherlands in our healthcare system for prevention and generally improving health, stopping the smoking, eating more healthy, etc. And the general idea is, all these lower class people, they eat unhealthy food, they get sick, we have to pay for their health care, it's horrible, they need to be taught or trained, or there needs to be almost penalizing, like we have to tax sugar, we have to tax this, and they would say, so that's what they would say, well, I go to the grocery store, and what keeps people from buying fruits and vegetables instead of sugar and fats? That would be their response to the story, what you're telling.
Yeah, well, I think there's a couple of kind of errors in that government thinking. One is that fruits and vegetables and grains are not meat and fat, which are sought after by any omnivore or carnivore. I mean, that's the nutritious stuff, okay? So you can't have that meat and fat because it's so expensive. And you're going to look for substitutes that fool your biology, that are salty, because that's where salt comes from, it's from meat and so on, that are salty, that are fatty, that are, there's a reason that you're attracted to that, a biological reason, and that it becomes addictive. And so you are going to be, because the government is not even recognizing the healthiness of cream, milk, butter, meat, and so on, I would argue, the government impositions that are, I think the institutional idea of what is healthy food is most likely completely wrong. Okay? And it's too extreme. And what happens is the upper class.
Hello, and thanks for joining us live here on EATV. Guy Mowbray with you for commentary alongside Sue Smith. And the focus is all on champions today.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here, and I'm anticipating a good game today. The coaching staff have done all they can. Now it's about taking it onto the pitch.
Whereas the underclasses, it would make a big difference in the health. But I don't think
Whistle
that
blows
you
and the
should.
first half is underway.
I mean,
the champions drama unfolds.
if you are stressed, and if you are sickly,
Here's how the home side lines up. Alisson is in goal. Ashraf Hakimi plays with Nuno Mendes in the fullback roles. And they've decided for this one to play with two in attack.
Who explained to me that one of the huge driving forces of organization in the pre-development time, like before
Fernandez.
before 1990.
This is a promising looking attack.
Terrific
Terrific chance.
is that in the city they have policy where you have one pitch per week as part of your coaching.
And it's a short corner.
And so in the country class, they flock to the city because you could get a
Well,
pitch
it
per week.
was looking good.
So it shows
Ultimately,
you
nothing
the
doing.
huge
Really solid defending.
Which also will be animal food. And so I think we have to recognize that.
Big
And
chance.
so with the
And
food,
it's an early lead. A terrific start.
technology, modern food technology and agri and everything, has fooled them.
So off we go at 1-0.
To eat this junk food with all these tastes and stuff and
Bastoni.
and fats and so on. Shake fats and fats with the battery and so on. So I think that we did a number on these people,
Kaka.
and as a result, there's a huge obesity epidemic
Better with the
US
ball.
and so on. But there was another point even if you have these wonderful government policies and want to produce food and grain,
Oh, he got stuck in there, didn't he?
you need to produce the food and grain for all those people.
There's a sense
And
of real
in the end,
urgency to this attack.
they are using production methods
And he's
that
in
produce
now.
more nutrition,
Oh, they've scored
more nutritious
again.
varieties
The
of
game
food.
had only just
That's important.
restarted after the
So
last one.
how many nutrients So the complexity of nutrients
2-0 then, as we get started again. Rivaldo.
And the agri-food methods of producing all these foods result in poor food that kind of well. It's harder to produce really poor meat. I don't know, because the animal that's producing the meat and the organs and so on is wrong
The defence quick to snatch it back.
from what's feeding it. So it's kind of a more powerful influence. But the plant, I believe the soil,
Fernandez.
it doesn't have that capacity to make anything other. It doesn't capture,
Really
I
well
think,
done. This could lead to something.
So I think poor soil makes poor grown things. But it doesn't have the same large impact on meat. That's why I think meat is something to do. Anyway, these are just ideas. These are just
Bruno Fernandes.
the deep end with my ideas about nutrition and so on. But
This is looking good. Now what comes
we got
next?
off track here. But
Amazing! Had to score but didn't.
Really present in society, and unconsciously
Pushing forward with options available now.
reinforce that foundation.
Lovely
Or
defensive
try to stay
work.
that.
Yeah, he got himself in a
And-
great position there.
It's going to be very hard to have
Rivaldo.
But the public program are good. There is a more fair balance.
Ronaldo.
There's a lot of times.
Let's talk about that.
Yeah, there is a
Claudia
more
Pino.
hierarchy when most people
Lovely
are more
pass,
healthy.
the ticket to
You
the in.
don't have extremely unhealthy people. And then development hierarchy with a lot of serfs and a very good.
Oh, could be here.
That's the fact that there's only something against hierarchy.
It's there! Hope restored! They're back in this game.
And you know they are the
That makes it 2-1, and away we go again. Bruno Fernandes. This is a lovely spell of possession, but maybe one pass too many and they've lost it.
We are going to do that, and we're able to do it, and we do it in a variety of ways. We're essential to keep the system from really getting into a bad place.
So what are we going for?
Cherky.
You and colleagues have sort of been modeling that recently.
Yes.
And that's where it ends, with possession lost.
Go for it.
That's
Okay,
class, that.
well,
I'm
I'll
sure
start
they'll look to
with
build
a
from
theoretical
here.
foundation before I start into that section. So remind me of the question, I do a little bit of theoretical foundation here. But
Claudia Pino.
we put the
Scruffy play,
Hickey
ball
and
lost.
his thesis advisor at the time together, worked on a research topic, and then published a paper which is
Setting something now.
So what the paper shows is a theoretical physics paper about the structure of society.
Neves.
Okay? And what they did in this paper is they tried to say, well, what are
They've given it
the
away
key
here.
ingredients? And try to make it simple possible
Ronaldo.
that would
It's there.
capture
And it's a
main
goal.
features
It's
of
a
society
real
and then try to
settler for
understand
them.
it.
Two in front
And
now.
so they started from the point of view that, well,
And we're back underway
society
and
is a
3-1.
so at least they have the right starting point. Now, how does that dominant hierarchy establish itself in itself? Well, it's just trying to
Oh, that's been won really smartly.
society necessarily. Okay, that's a good
Positive
ingredient for
play
it
on
all,
the
right?
front foot.
And then let's not those interactions in view of individuals trying to establish themselves within that family. So they use the simplest
Ronaldo.
model possible, which is the
Have a go
following.
here.
Yo,
That was passed towards the goal, but it's wide of the target.
Within that hierarchy, either with the court, an institution, colleague, the boss, whatever. During that event,
Ferran Torres.
they're going to represent the conflict.
Excellent reading of the game to win the ball.
You're either going to be put in place or you're going to have to find a little bit more status within that step. Okay. So it turns out that you can monitor those interactions.
They might be in.
Two friends.
Oh, that's really well cut out.
One is authoritarian is the system.
Really
And
good
what that
pass.
is
What a
when
chance
going
here.
against someone like a higher focus
Well, there's
action,
another. And
if
they're
the
running
sample
away
going
with it
on
now.
getting some
It's
gains
become a question of just
because
how
you
many
will,
they'll
then
get.
that's an extremely authoritarian system. If sometimes you
So
can
the
win a
restart
little
of a game
advantage
that's
by
rapidly
putting back,
running
then
away
that's a
from
less
them.
authoritarian system. So there's this parameter of
Nuno
authoritarian
Mendes.
society. And it's about when you come into contact with the
Half-time is
and the
approaching
chance of
soon,
getting some
and it's
benefit.
not gone well for them. The crowd
So
might
that's
make
the
their feelings clear
authoritarian blend.
about how this is
There's
going
another
when the whistle
blend,
goes.
which
It's
is the
been a really
violence
bad
blend.
first half, hasn't
What
it?
that
The
means
back
is
line
when
has
you have
been
those pieces of
woeful.
action
Feels like
and you
every
lose,
time the
how
opposition
big
come
is the
forward,
punishment?
they're going to concede.
How much do
Needs
you
to be a
lose?
huge
Do you
improvement in the
lose?
second
How
half.
do you lose? Do you lose? You know, do they cut off an arm? Do they? And so on. And how violent is it? How extreme is it? How much status within society do you lose? How many notches do you
Fernandez.
when you lose one of these things? Okay. The more you
This could get interesting.
That's the one.
The effort's
So the
shut out.
Well, that's brilliant, isn't it? It's a great block.
And the referee's whistle brings the first 45 minutes to a close.
That you can have a nice, stable, what we call a democracy, stratified society that will work for a long time. If the violence and authoritarian standards aren't bigger than a certain limit. So within certain bounds, if you stay there, you can have a stable, well-stratified society that will be fair to most people. But as soon as those standards, one or the other go outside of these bounds, then the society quickly spirals down into a completely authoritarian system, where you basically have very few elites, very, very wealthy, very powerful influence, but everyone else, and mostly everyone else, is surplus level. And you race towards that as soon as those standards get out of the way. So the first, yes, it is. You go very quickly there. And so it's what we call a phase diagram in terms of these two standards. So this allows us to understand that in a society that's trying to stay stable, because it's advantageous to have that successful society, because you're stronger as a society as well. You're utilizing the resources you have access to more efficiently, better, you're stronger, you're more inventive, you're more everything, right? So you want to stay there. And so what you notice is that the laws are changing. The government is doing different policies. All sorts of things are changing, but they're all...
Well, he's lost the ball, and any chance has gone.
They're adjusting how scared the courts are going to be, how you can ask the government to make a change, and when you pass hard and a competition, when you make a demonstration,
Past the
what's the
defender.
punishment going to be? How severe is it?
They won't be going
So
any further.
the laws,
Nicely won. And this
basically
could be.
regulate.
And another goal.
So
It
every
seemed
single
all
law,
over before, but there's
if
another
the
to...
state is working as a state that really does want to stabilize it, if it hasn't been taken over by elites that just want to get going and don't care what happens to the nation or to society, then if the state is working properly, it is constantly adjusting these parameters so as to keep stability. So the circumstances change. Maybe there's an outside threat or competition or an environmental change or whatever. There's things changing that affect the nation, that affect people, and the government adjusts in such a way that the donor party stays stable and stays fair. In principle, once you see this theoretical model, you can kind of understand why lawmaking is so important and is so critical, and it's part of statecraft. It's part of statecraft. It really is. And so that's ideally how it is. But it gets,
Here it is again, and this is great pressure. High up the field, they don't just go in ones and twos, they all go together, and that makes it so difficult to play out. It's a nice finish after that.
Under real pressure there, and it counted.
There's other things you'll compete with the nation state again. And they can compete in a way that many people stop. So that's kind of how you try to put this in practice. Understand society. They're always competing, they're always elite because there's large humans, both invited to the college. Finding ways to slow people.
Well, this is all about the press from the front. They go as a team, making it so difficult for the defence to get out. And then once they win it back, they're so clinical. It's a lovely goal.
Hakimi wants stability and have a history of seeking and having stability like China, then you are going to recognize these problems. You're going to eliminate them. China has, over the course of many decades, eliminated corruption. Not completely, you can't eliminate it completely, but has dramatically reduced corruption. Okay, just wipe it out, and so on. So you can make these. Once you identify these problems, as a state, you can target the problem and solve it. You can target extreme poverty and recognize that as a burden, and that those are individuals that are not, I guess you could say, productive towards the whole, are not really giving as much as they could, and bring them out of poverty. You can do that. And so the history of nations is a history of these efforts and failures.
And focus and a cheap throw-in conceded.
So that's my wisdom of justice. I recently about this. I've written a conceptual model of how states fail, empires and states, why they fail and how they fail. Which I think
They got so far, but no end result.
Yes, and I've explained that ideology play a big role as well. I've explained how globalization brought up after the
Lovely incisive ball. One more to the total, and there's no sign of them stopping there.
They include anti-racism, sort of language, toxic language, but basically climate change and such ideologies. And I've explained how these ideologies are generic ideologies that are that take over
Rodrigo.
people's mind, if you like, becomes their ideology
Kaka.
in order to
Now, this might
manipulate
be
them,
promising.
facilitate that they participate in the plan.
He's read his mind there.
And so I've done the history of that. And it's extraordinary. It's really, the climate change one is really interesting because it has recently been challenged at the highest level. The United States has withdrawn from the 1992 treaty.
Deceptive.
And
Great
that
reading
kind
of the
thing,
game.
right? So there have been two big changes. And this shows that the ideology no longer serves the national interest of this state trying to keep and have power.
That is where it
threaten
ends.
others. So there's all these things. And so the ideology.
Kaka.
Different hierarchies, even almost.
Yes.
That's a lovely ball. There might be something
We're
building
fighting
now.
for the period of upheaval.
It's a goal. That's something. We say you never know sometimes, but I think we do.
Yes. This is in my life. I've never seen a period. This is absolutely.
Ronaldo.
When I somebody said about the model of society about family, about violence, I think that's so important to tell us because for activists and for people to realize in this period of upheaval that only if the state is dominant.
No way through. Possession lost.
Many of us,
Well,
many
nice
people have
approach,
suffered
wasn't it? But the final ball just wasn't there.
If you just simply look at what happened during COVID, there are people who were treated terribly, who suffered greatly. But there's very something I can understand.
Excellent reading of the game to win the ball.
For more people about this, something is okay. So now I'm going to turn around.
Coutinho.
I'm going to use violence. I'm going
Promising
to use
position, this.
manipulate the system to my advantage in order to come out on top, use violence. So that the warning is that even at all the great people in history, they warn against that because it doesn't create a better system. If you continue
Oh,
investment,
good
even if
chance
you
was
change
building
the top
there.
of the dominant hierarchy, but you keep the investments and you keep the violence in the system, then you don't get a better system. You don't get a more
Kaka.
stable world.
Possession
You don't
lost
get a better
just
world.
at the point
It's
of
a very
something happening.
Important warning in there that I hope that people take part in and feel.
Ryan Cherki.
However hurt you feeling by what
Ronaldo.
happened. So, going back to the topic of mortality, so what happens
Sloppy play,
in
ball
periods
lost.
of social upheaval? What happens to our health? What happens to our mortality?
Rafa Leao.
I think historically, the period at the end of the age of the collapse, these periods of upheaval that occur, and that have been studied extensively, cycles up and so on.
Pina.
I think
A really good
Yeah.
interception to take the ball.
one thing would be to start to
Kaka.
understand this more deeply and to
There's
try
a
to
chance for them
prevent
to go now.
getting there. And that's why I don't have paper about
Good ball, it could be in.
failing empire.
Played in now.
That would be ideal.
That's
If
all
Chasing
about
understood
awareness
these
from an
concepts
alert
and did
keeper.
the right thing. And I think a really good example of that in our recent history is Russia and China. I mean, they really understand these fundamental economic and societal elements of
And the
stable
chance
nation.
slips away.
And they really try to guide in that direction.
All a bit chaotic,
but
this.
the
Yeah,
period
it's
of
all a bit
upheaval,
sloppy, isn't it?
once they occur,
Oh, worth a shot. Oh, that's
in the
brilliant.
end, both the populist movements and the elites are going to play a role in really pushing back against other elites or against the state to create something that's different. There's going to be kind of a reset. There's a reset for the thing, okay? And following that reset, there's a long period of, again, you recover this kind of stratified state of society, okay? So following that reset, you have, for example, the Enlightenment period, the Renaissance. That's following some of these huge upheavals, okay? So it's not true, I don't agree with the idea that
And he crosses the line for a corner.
is nasty because you only
Take
put
it
other
short.
meetings and different that in place. I think that's not a view that's
Superb
consistent with natural
reactions to
history.
cancel out a brilliant
Natural
effort.
history actually shows these waves, these cycles, where the dominant hierarchy, the society, if you like, is creeping towards
Oh, brilliant
second
anticipation.
exploitation of people. And is creeping towards it, and what they
Morgan.
call it is spiking, food,
Setting up the chance.
and inflation. It's getting worse and worse and worse.
Gathers the
People
ball
are really
in
having a
easily.
hard time trying to cope by different ways, and there's more oppressive laws being put in place. You can't hunt in the forest, you
Getting
can't
closer.
access the rivers for kids, you can't do
Oh,
that.
this
We're
is getting
really being
unbelievable.
fortunate to
It is an
have
absolute
a lot of
thrashing.
people get sick that are under nerves and so on. The Black Plague
Here we
is
can see it again.
probably
This is
example of
really
that.
good strength. She uses
Plague,
her
I mean,
body well,
the Black
and
Death,
once she gets a yard,
because
she
as
finishes it
part of it,
nicely.
demonstrated
Really good
that the
composure.
guys actually doing sickly and underdeveloped and had, bad bones, bad teeth, bad
Setting
everything.
something now.
And
What a
so
chance here. Oh, excellent reflexes.
Yeah, that's all about awareness and timing. Excellent goalkeeping.
And it's a long period.
They've gone with a short one.
By the moment, by the moment. So we're
Able to choose the right option.
period like that.
Waiting, not trying to
It's
force
very,
things.
it's
A
not
vital
very
block.
interesting.
Well, it was looking good, but ultimately nothing
and it's
doing.
not the same institutions, and it's not the same players and political systems and cultures.
And there's the final whistle. Positive result, at least as far as the away fans are concerned. Your thoughts?
Well, that was a dominant performance. They just couldn't live with him from an attacking perspective.
It's the opposite. Because everybody people outside and that's in development. So it's not moving the more effective, the more sickly people, and more spoiled people. On the other hand. So not the same thing is happening everywhere, but certainly in our Western countries, we are in that period of turmoil. And solutions need to be found. And the solutions will be found by interactions. And I don't want to start telling people what to do and how to respond, except that, it's important to be connected as much as you can with other people. It's important not to try to have the best view and understanding and perception of what's happening to you and to your community, and to respond accordingly. I don't think we have to tell people not to be violent, because as soon as they are violent, the repression by police and the military is extreme. And so that's enough to keep people from being violent. And in fact, I would say that we have the opposite problem, that people have this false notion that a peaceful demonstration, can actually have an influence. That's only true under very certain special conditions, but it's generally not true in these periods, okay? So you can go out. Now, we have a remnant of a legal system and with elections, so that's a very powerful mechanism. It has not been destroyed yet. What you do is you strategically try to get elites to fight each other in order to create more justice and so on. And so you try to elect people that are going to challenge the most well-installed people that are just moving ahead with this extreme exploitation. You can do all kinds of things. You can get involved in community, politically, education in terms of understanding that is real understanding that you're trying to communicate, like what we're doing now. You can do many things. And many people will falter and die and get into addiction. The addiction problem of opioids and alcohol is huge in the post-COVID period, because it really ramped up in many societies during COVID, because people were isolated, they were degraded, so they steered even more heavily towards opioids. And those addictions don't go away. You're stuck with them for, basically, to simplify it, for life. And so those people, the mortality of young people who became addicted is staying high. That is a persistent mortality that we see. And so there's all kinds of responses to these terrible pressures. Self-destruction is one, organizing, but you shouldn't be too naive and think that at this stage, I would not assume that the system is on your side. I would assume that you have to force it to do the right thing. Force it by influence, by speech, by communication, by being present. So I said that a demonstration with science is probably ineffective. That's a simplification, because it's effective in bringing people together. It's effective in the links that it makes. It's effective in communication. It's effective in many ways. But in itself, it's not the action that applies real pressure to the government. The real pressure comes when they start to notice that everybody's developing.
Well, just the sort of weather the fans were hoping for this evening. It's absolutely ideal. I'm Derek Ray, and my commentary partner here on the gantry is the former Arsenal and West Ham player Stuart Robson. And we're excited to present this live Champions contest. Your expectations?
Well, they need the 3 points here today. They were disappointing last time out, but I think they've got some good players who might just turn it on here. This will be an interesting game, that's for sure.
Which line
And away they go, off and running here in this Champions encounter.
And clear and every disobedience from a distance may very well
Ronaldo in space on the
lead
flank.
to a more play. I know that
Out over the byline.
people thought that it was very
Goes short.
what I would call evil didn't quite backtracking
And swiftly ending that attack.
inexcusable violation of body integrity that would require
Milan van Ewijk.
something more than just saying, oh, wait, I can do it, and if it's going to some form of resistance. So I definitely agree with that. I think that we definitely also should not be telling people
Alert
that they should
intervention.
keep their efforts only to changing how they vote or voting on time. But I think that we need to tell people they need to get much more active,
Plenty of
much more
support
involved.
here.
People
Well, a good tackle.
do people, if they feel violent in their bodies, or in their environment,
Well,
or in
sloppy
their
from both
access to
sides, you have to
resources, or
say.
taking away from their facilities, as soon as you feel violent, you either accept it and it's like a biological response. You either bend down and become more sticky and accept it, or
Ronaldo.
you stand up and fight. Fight in the sense of slipping back and resisting it, okay? And so, but that's when you respond.
The Dons come away with it.
Violent. And the biggest sudden violations, like loss of job, huge things that happen in our lives. Those are
Well,
the
you never
times
quite
when
know
people
who's going to
actually
dominate a
get
game
sick
in
and die.
advance, but I think we can maybe
And
make it
or
up.
they will just
And
have
a
a
goal right off the bat. No wonder they're
I
jumping
think
for
we
joy.
have to keep it up, if we can. The concept of thinking biopsychological responses to this horrible effect,
Plenty of support
and
here.
try to find ways
And a
to
relatively straightforward
stand
save
up
for the
and fight.
keeper.
That's kind of the secret, and that's where social contacts come in, because this is like examples of that. It's about people supporting you
Showing a great
and
defensive
understanding you
instinct.
as you fight. Then it's a little bit, you have more strength to do.
It's definitely been my experience talking specifically to you, among others, has helped me to figure out how to fight that.
Disappointing for the Dons to give it away like that.
At the end of this, because at some point we've actually been talking for quite a while. To talk a little bit about,
Roldan.
specifically from our own experiences, about academics who want to fight back against systems that they disagree with. I know that's something that you have experience with. I
So
think
to
that
dispossess your
viewers
opponent.
listening to you talk about all these
And flag raised. Offside.
Well, it was always going to be offside. He just needed to hold on to the ball that little bit longer.
Well, yeah, and
And support available. Very quick thinking there. Free kick here.
oh my God. Well,
The Dons being afforded too much room.
and to acquire a PC and then be successful with this
Chance for the
and
leveller.
unexpected. You
And it's
have
a
to be
goal.
completely
Level
indoctrinated.
again.
So
What
even
a
the
match
penny
this is
factor
turning out
is
to be.
an alternate final guarantee of
Well, let's have
complete
another look
indoctrination
at this.
and to
He
be
does really well
so
to pick the
you
right
have to
pass here,
demonstrate
but
that
then
you
there's
never
still
focus
plenty to do
before
afterwards.
you get
You
there.
have to say it's a
And,
really nice finish.
so
Just to guide it
there
into
is
the
very
net.
little
That's a
hope
lovely goal.
that
And good work to regain possession.
academia, I think, at least in my experience, at least in North America. It's virtually
Decent
impossible.
position for the
Even
Dons
those
to be in.
strongly indoctrinated.
Could be dangerous.
Probably medicine indoctrinated.
And they're breathing a sigh of relief. Ball
But
one.
less so in the legal system. There are still more radical lawyers around and things like that, because they defend people. They work with people who have gotten into trouble
Cutting
with
it
fraud
out.
conspiracies. Anyway, so I think there's very little hope in academia. But I still think that there are academics who awaken to some of the fundamental and structural injustices, and they do their best and they fight the good fight at the committee level, if you like, or in the classroom, what they do. But even the classroom, over the course of my tenure, was completely transformed. There was a lot more academic freedom in terms of the approach of materials, how you communicate,
And,
exactly what topics you're going to
So the Dons kicking off. Let's find out if they can square the game here.
And it was really hands down, uniformized, and controlled extremely at the end of my career. And I was fired, because I did not go along with
A long way from the perfect
and
pass.
the lies